Software engineers who think about moving to Japan will often take a look at the salaries and the exchange rate, see an insane pay cut, and decide, well, I can just go on vacation. The math doesn't quite work out that way, though. I ran some numbers, and it turns out that you can take home the same amount on $100,000 in Tokyo as you would on $180,000 in San Francisco. I moved to Japan 8 years ago, and even though I took a pay cut to do so, my cost of living instantly became a fraction of what they were in the US. And even though I took the leap, I'm going to show you the comparison that I wish I had when I first moved that would have gotten me here a lot sooner. So let's get into it. All right, so here's the spreadsheet. I'm going to gradually reveal things so that you have to watch the whole video, LOL. But right, so in order to get a $100,000 USD salary equivalent, what we need is 15 million in Japanese yen. So then on the right, I have the Tokyo Advantage column, which is just the difference in stuff. You can see right off the bat, we start off 80,000 yen or 80,000 USD in the red. Don't worry, like I said, that's why we watch that's why we have the whole video, right? So then so monthly net pay for San Francisco on 180,000. This was just come from a calculator. I don't know how accurate this is. I've never lived in San Francisco, so I don't know. I do have a tax calculator that I built myself for estimating Japanese taxes, and what that gave me for 15 million yen is 980,000. Or the monthly net pay would be 980,000 yen. And so even with that, we are still 3,500 in the hole with the Tokyo situation, but that's where things start to change. So we're going to look at all of these different costs, typical living cost for anyone, and we'll see what happens. So for rent in San Francisco, if you want to live somewhere in like the city center as a single person, then it's going to be something like $3,000 to $4,000. This is of course variable depending on like where exactly in the city you live and like do you take roommates and all that stuff. But I'm assuming something like 3,500 for a single person. In Tokyo, you can get a single person apartment in the city center in like Ebisu, in Shimokitazawa, in Shinjuku, in Shibuya for like 200,000 yen. That turns out to about 1,300 USD, which gives us a huge chunk back. So we are, we're quickly working back up. So rent is going to be the biggest part of this. And as you can see, we do rent is much more affordable in Tokyo. There's a lot of housing. It's very heavily available. There's not as much competition. There are some intangibles about that, but for the most part, much more affordable in Tokyo. The next, I'm going to kind of just reveal these all at the same time, since they're all sort of in the same category. So phone, internet, utilities in total is like $360 in San Francisco. For phone, I personally pay like 3,000 yen for my phone bill, and I get 10 gigs included, 10 gigs at 5G. And that's like $27 USD. So we're making a little bit back there. In San Francisco, an internet plan is probably not going to get you gigabit internet, and it's going to be like $60. In my internet, I get 10 gigs down, and it costs me about 5,000 yen. So you're probably going to be paying less than 5,000. Also, some apartments will have it included. So if you have that, then this just becomes totally free. But in this case, if you're paying 5,000 yen, then you are, you're making back 26 USD. And then for utilities, like this is, this depends on a whole bunch of stuff. Is it the winter or summer? Are you blasting the AC or the heater? Like do you take long baths or whatever? This is very variable, but I took these numbers from like a cost of living website, and this is the number that it had for general utilities. In Tokyo, in my house, we usually spend something like 200,000 yen. This turns out to about $133, and so we're kind of bringing back another 116. So The next one, food is also super this one depends completely on the individual. Someone could be living on, ramen noodles every day and spend like $20 a month. Someone could also be going to Michelin, 2 and 3 stars every night and spending $1,000 a night. It's very individual. And then, but then, in Tokyo, like 80,000 is a pretty good. It's a pretty good food budget. Like that gets you a lot of eating out. That gets you a lot of like, if you like to go to like izakayas and stuff, it gets you a lot of that. You can of course adjust it up and down depending on, how much do you cook at home, what kind of cooking do you do at home. It's very variable. So I just kind of like took some general cost of living numbers and used those. And with these numbers, then we get another Tokyo Advantage of $466. So, that's pretty big. Then the next one. So transport is interesting because, again, I've never lived in San Francisco, so I don't know if this is like a super representative number. I kind of just took like the cost of a monthly bus pass, and then also like, just added a little bit extra for like occasional Uber rides and stuff. And that gave me like $170. But for this is a little bit, maybe a little bit misleading, a little bit of a bait number. But in Japan, your employer reimburses your commuting costs that take you from your home to the office. And so usually this is done in the form of like a like monthly train pass, or three monthly or 6 monthly. And so this so the way that it works is that any time, as long as you have the bus pass or the train pass, you can go from either of the two stations and then anywhere in between, and it's totally free on that pass. If you do like other traveling outside of your like office commute, then this will cost some money for like, normal just like train fares. But even if we do something like, 100,000 yen, like we're still making, 10,000 yen, which would get you a lot of trains. Then you're still making back something like $100. And then the other one, health insurance, is not part of your like post taxes stuff in the US. And so, you have to factor in the premiums as part of it. But in Japan, it's part of your taxes. And so this is gone before your monthly net pay is even accounted for. And my tax calculator does estimate this, or does incorporate this knowledge. So, with this, I just took this number from, one of those other websites, like what's the typical health insurance premiums for a software engineer in San Francisco. It gave me $600, so I just kind of used that. Please correct me if this is super wrong. But yeah, so then since in Japan that's basically just like accounted for before you even get your paycheck, we end up with kind of $600 sort of extra back in our pocket. And then what that kind of leaves us with is our core expenses in San Francisco based on these numbers, which again, highly variable, depends on a lot of stuff. Something like $5,600. And then the same, more or less like the same kind of thing in Japan gives, would cost us about $2,060. So 3,570 USD is the quote unquote Tokyo Advantage. And if we look at the monthly net pay, that was 35. We were down 3,566 USD. So what that means is at the end of the day, with the exchange rate of 150, you actually end up with $3 whole more in Japan, in Tokyo, on a 100K salary than you would in San Francisco on a 180K salary. Which is, I think that's insane, right? That's bonkers. We started off minus 80,000 and we're we're in the black, where we get money back. And of course, it's important to note that this is due to this is the current exchange rate of something like 150. Whenever I first came here, the exchange rate was 108. I don't expect that we'll see that exchange rate anytime in the near future, but if it does get better for on the yen side, then of course the Tokyo advantage just gets even better. And then, conversely, if the exchange rate, why can I not? Oh no. Yeah, conversely, if the exchange rate, cranked up to like 180 yen per USD, then we start getting, the math becomes a lot more US or a lot more US favored. And so there is that to consider. I don't know what's going to happen to the exchange rate. No one does, probably. If they do, they're probably making a bunch of money on, like selling futures on it. But yeah. Also, this doesn't really include like the intangibles, right? So, Japan is a much safer country. Japan has, like living in Tokyo. Tokyo is a super global city. San Francisco is a very diverse and like global city as well. But Tokyo is like truly a global city. You can find just anything that you want, basically. And some stuff is like harder to find than it would be in the US. Like Mexican food is a big one that I have had my fair gripes about Japan having a lack of Mexican food. But it is truly a global city, so you have access to just about everything. It's a much safer city, or it's much safer just in general. San Francisco is not like a super dangerous place or anything, but Tokyo is like absolutely one of the safest cities in the world. And so there's a lot of intangibles that also come with living in Japan that sort of that help balance the scales for me a lot to like feel okay about continuing to live in Japan. Also, another big one is like health insurance. Like, I don't have to fight with like health insurance providers about like, was this bottle of water in network or whatever? Is the anesthesiologist that like didn't even do anything, and they just like, did they like do why do I have to pay for them? All of those headaches just don't happen. Like you just show them your insurance card at the doctor, and it just happens there, and then it's done. And it's so much nicer. And there's a lot of stuff, of course, not everything is better. But there's a lot of stuff that is, like the transport system is great. Health insurance is much nicer to deal with. The transportation, I've said that a few times. Everything is cheaper, as we have just seen on the spreadsheet. So yeah, I hope this has been, at least interesting. If anyone lives in San Francisco and wants to correct any of these numbers, like please feel free to like do so in the comments. Of course, the next question is like, how can someone get to a 15 million yen salary? And that's something that I plan to cover in a future video. So if you're interested in that video, like please give the channel a subscribe. Please comment with anything else that you're interested in about what it's like to be a software engineer in Japan. Anything like that. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you had a good one, and let me know what you'd like to see next.